Hey, it's Grady at Twin Creek Audio. Today I want to talk about toms. No, not your friend Tom. My friend Tom's pretty cool, but we're not talking about him. We're talking about the big round toms on a drum kit and how to get those things to stand out in your mix. So today I'm going to show you a technique that I use all the time to get my toms to come out in the mix without messing everything else up. There are lots of techniques to get your toms to be bigger and longer. A fast release on a compressor can help kind of extend the decay of a tom. So that's a good way to do it. We're going to use a variation of that trick today. This trick should allow you to bring the toms way out front in your mix at the times when it's crucial and not let it interfere with the overall balance of the mix. So I've got this set up on the analog console here. We've got kick, snare, and then the toms, I've stemmed those out of the DAW. So we've got 3 toms, 2 rack toms and a floor tom that are sent out to this pair of channels. So they're panned hard left and right because they're mixed in the box like I want my toms. So this is the tom submix. Then we've got overheads and room mic and bass and other instruments that I'm going to play just for part of the demonstration so you can hear what this sounds like with a lot of other instruments. But the main thing we're concentrating on is these toms right here. So here's our stereo pair of toms. And up here, these other small faders on this console, these are an auxiliary send, basically. But they can send to a pair of subgroups. So I actually have a variable adjustment for how much of this tom stem that I'm sending to a subgroup, which is something I'll get to in a minute, why we're sending toms to the subgroup. So we've got tom pair here. And then these faders are sending these toms to subgroups 1 and 2 right here. On this console, you accomplish that by pressing these XFX buttons, and that turns these small faders into a post fader aux send, but this aux send can send to a pair of buses. On a regular, like an 8-bus console, a Mackie 8-bus, or a Soundtrack's Topaz, or a Ghost, or something like that, you would just assign your channels to the main mix as well as the subgroups or a pair of buses. And what we're doing there is we've got a compressor strapped across that subgroup, that pair of subgroups. So you've got a stereo compressor patched across the subgroups, and then you're sending an amount of the toms to that subgroup that's getting compressed. On this console, any of the channels can be converted to a subgroup, and all the channels have gates. So I have the ability to gate that compressed submix, which is a big part of this trick, because when you're really compressing toms like we're going to be doing on this subgroup, you're going to have a lot of artifacts if you're compressing something that hard and you're allowing all the bleed to get into the mix as well. So I've got that compressed subgroup, and then I have it gated. On this console, any of the channels can turn into a subgroup. For example, channel 7 would turn into bus 7 if I press the sub switch at the top of the channel, and all the channels on this console have built-in gates. So I'm able to use a pair of subgroups with the gates on the console. You can do all of this stuff in your DAW as well. It's pretty easy. If anybody'd like to see a video about that, I can make a video. I don't normally do a lot of screen capture DAW kind of videos here on the channel, but I could show you how this trick is done in the DAW. If anybody has any trouble figuring this out. The compressor I'm using on the subgroups for this is the ART dual limiter, which is a PWM compressor. It's actually extremely clean. And in this mix, we're just really wanting to make the toms bigger and a little punchier and lengthen the decay just a little bit. And also maybe bring up a little bit of the ambience around the toms when they come in. That means the gate has to open, of course, the way that I'm doing this. So pretty cool. I don't have the toms themselves gated. The dry tom tracks are just going to the main mix the entire time. And I don't have them gated because I like the extra energy that the little bit of bleed on the tom mic provides, so I'm not gating the tom channels themselves. I'm gating the subgroup where I'm actually compressing the toms. So I have a gate on the compressed version of the toms, but not on the dry toms. So the bleed from the tom mics is still there in between the tom fills. So all of my drums are playing through the entire mix. I don't have any gates on any of the individual drum channels or even the room mic. There is a room mic also involved in this. Actually, that's bass guitar and that's the room mic. So there's no gates on anything except for the compression submix on just the toms. And those gates open when there's a big tom fill. So it allows those compressed toms to come out and really bring that tom fill out of the mix. It really kind of features the tom fills. So let's take a look at the gates really quick, and then I'll start playing back what this sounds like. Here are my gates on the console. You can see that they're shut right now. These gates have a filter, so I can actually kind of fine tune the frequency that I want the gate to trigger on. And so I've got that tuned for the toms specifically. And of course the threshold control is right here, so that sets the level at which the gates are going to open. This is using the level that's coming in to the bus and not the level coming back from the compressor. So I'm not going to change the threshold by using these two small faders, which are my subgroup faders. If I push these up, it's not going to affect my threshold control. The other thing to be aware of when you're doing this is the release time. Don't make that too short because you'll kill the decay of the toms if this release is too short. But if it's too long, then you're going to have a lot of other bleed and cymbal trash coming through the compression submix, which is going to sound kind of funny. So you've really got to work on fine-tuning these with your particular source material to get it sounding exactly right. I've chosen a demonstration track today that is full of tom fills. It's the reason that I chose it, actually. It's a song from the Shadow+Echo album, The Dark Horse. It's called Reign of Sadness. So we're just going to hear a section of that for this demonstration. Okay, I found my remote. I can't reach the keyboard because there's a tripod over there filming the gate. So let's hear what this sounds like all together first. Okay, I'm going to mute out everything but the tom submix that's coming from the DAW, so that's our dry toms, and then the compression submix, and hear the two of those together. And yes, there is some bleed on the original tom mics. Like I said in the beginning, I like to leave a little bit of the bleed on the dry tom mics because it adds a little bit of energy to the overall kit. Whenever I gate the actual tom mics themselves, I don't seem to ever like the sound of that. It seems to take away something. So I've only gated the submix. That's why you heard the bleed during the demonstration. Now let's hear the toms without the compression submix added to them. You can still see the gates opening and closing over there, but I pulled the faders on the subgroups down, so you're just hearing the dry toms because I have those in solo. The original recording of these toms actually sounds pretty good, so we're just adding a little bit more beef, and we're adding a little bit more decay to the drums, and it brings up a little bit of ambience. There's a little bit of cymbal bleed getting through, but in the context of the overall mix, it's not causing any problems. Let's solo the drums and bass and put our compression submix back in the mix. Let's put everything back in the mix, no vocals or anything, but all the instruments, put it all in the mix, and then I've kind of exaggerated this trick for the video, but let's hear the entire mix all together and see what this sounds like. Not the other thing I've done here is I've actually EQ'd the subgroups with the compressor on them. So I've removed some highs at 12K, I added a little bit of lows to the left side where the smaller toms are, and removed some low mids at a couple of different frequencies, just tuning that by ear. So I actually have also tuned my compression submix with some of the EQ on the console. Not the best mix in the world, but it's about the tom demonstration. This is not an actual mix I'm doing. This is just something I set up to demonstrate this. So I think it sounds pretty good, and it proves the point. This is a trick that works. I've used this trick on a lot of mixes that I've done that have been released commercially. So it's something that does work. Of course, you can also use other techniques. Just using a fast release on compression on your toms will work. But it becomes a problem when you have a lot of bleed on your tom tracks, which we don't have a terrible amount of bleed on these, but there is some. So that's kind of the trade-off. If you've got a lot of bleed on your tom tracks, but you want to beef them up and really make them punchy, add some sustain, maybe bring up a little bit of the ambience around the toms, this is a good technique. Of course, getting a great tom sound starts with great toms and great sounds in the first place, but assuming you've got that and you've got a relatively decent tom sound on your recording, you can use this technique to beef those toms up in the mix, give them a little bit more sustain if you like, or just make them really upfront and punchy so that the tom fills are featured a lot more. I think it's a really cool trick. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, make sure to check out all the links in the video description for ways to help support this channel, as well as checking out other videos here on the channel and subscribing to the Twin Creek Audio YouTube channel if you have not done so already. Also, make sure to go ahead and like this video because that also helps the channel. I appreciate everyone out there for watching. Thank you so much to all the new subscribers. I hope all of you have an excellent and wonderful day, night, evening, weekend, weekday, hour, minute, second, nanosecond. Whatever it is you're having, have a good one. Thanks for watching.